Starting street photography, there are a few things that you absolutely have to know, like what gear to get. There is a jungle out there with different brands and they all claim that they have the best gear for you. Then there is the actual photography itself. What is required to get good? What do you have to do yourself? And what to look for when we are out and about shooting. Because in street photography, no day is ever the same. That is also the beauty of it. That's why I call street photography my everyday adventure. And we'll cover all that in this ABC street photography video aimed at beginner street photographers. So let's start with A, and that is gear. You absolutely need the very best gear. And I don't mean that you need the very best or the latest and greatest and most expensive cameras out there. The best gear for you is the gear that you want to pick up and actually go out and use. For me, that is the Fuji system. I've been back and forth between the Fujis and Sonys, and I think it was Nikon at some point, but I always come back to Fuji. And to me, that is the best system for street photography. Speaking about cameras, I have a few options for you. The first one is obviously the one I just mentioned. It's the Fujifilm X-T5. It's an excellent camera. It's weather sealed and it gets the job done. And I can also easily film with it since I like to make these videos here on YouTube. So that's a great setup. It is quite expensive nowadays at around $1,800, but you will have this camera forever. This camera is also a few years old now, so you might be able to find one on the secondhand market much cheaper. Then option 2 would be a Fujifilm X-T3. That's also a very good stills camera, and I think it films decent as well. So you'll definitely find that much cheaper on the secondhand market. The third option, if you absolutely want to go wild and have a brand new camera for street photography, I would go for the Fujifilm X-T50. Now, I made a video about street photography in Tokyo with my X-T30 a few years back. You can watch that video up here somewhere, and that's a lovely setup right there as well. This is not weather sealed, but if you're careful, this camera will also last you forever. So you have a lot of good options, but I'm mainly going to talk about the Fuji system. Either way, when it comes to picking your camera, go with a camera that you can change lenses on. Speaking of lenses, you can either choose zoom lenses or you can choose a prime lens. I use mainly prime lenses because I think that's just my style now and I know exactly what I want to use. But if you're a complete beginner, I would recommend going for a zoom lens so you can experiment and find out what focal range you like to work with the most. So a good zoom lens for street photography would be the Sigma 18-50 f2.8. It's a very small lens, and I made a video from London, I think it was, when I went there with my girlfriend for a long weekend a few years back. Very impressed with that setup and the lens itself because it's so easy to carry with you. You don't have to lug along a big setup. Option 2 on the subject of zoom lenses, you can go for the premium 16-55 f2.8. This is a very big and clunky lens, although it's fast at f2.8, meaning it has better low light capabilities. But for beginners, this is very expensive and it's also quite heavy, so I wouldn't really recommend that one. But if you absolutely must have the very best technical and sharpest lens from Fujifilm in the mid-range zoom, this is the one you want. The third option for zoom lenses would be the 16-50 f2.8 to 4.8. I think the Fuji X-T50 comes in a bundle with this lens as well. So if you're in the market for the complete kit, that's the one you want. As a side note to these zoom lenses, I think I would probably swap my 16-55 f2.8 for the Sigma 18-50, simply because it's smaller and that is something I value more, i.e., as I mentioned before, that is the best setup for me. Because this lens that I will make a review video about later on this channel is just too big, so I rarely take it with me, even though it's a great lens in terms of technical qualities and sharpness and all that stuff. It's no use on my shelf, so there's that. When it comes to prime lenses, I already mentioned this pancake lens right here. It's the 27mm f2.8. I think that is the perfect overall prime lens from Fuji, especially for street photography. I've had so much fun with that lens. It's not that expensive either. I think it's around $400 US, something like that. Yes, photography gear is expensive, so the initial cost, if you are just starting out, yeah, it is a bit, but with any hobby, it's worth it probably in the end. So there you go. The second lens I would recommend would be this one right here. This is the more premium 23mm f1.4, so it's a very fast lens, meaning that it has better low light qualities. So I use that one for my night street photography, for example, because I can stop it all the way down to f1.4 and get those lovely blurry backgrounds and all that stuff. The third, more budget option would be the 23mm f2.0. It's much smaller than this lens I just mentioned, and you can get a great deal on the second-hand market. But if I had to choose between one of these lenses, I would definitely go for this 27mm pancake lens, and you can find the links to all the gear that I'm mentioning here in this video down in the description. The 27mm, fantastic lens. Great all-round prime lens right there. B in this ABC video about street photography is for going out a lot. You can watch other people's work, you can watch videos about how to do street photography, but it will only get you so far. It's like with anything else, you can read up on it or study yourself to death, but if you don't do it, you will never get better, and you will never know what works. So go out a lot and practice what you have seen others do in their videos, in their photography. Try to replicate your favorite photographer's work, and eventually you will develop your own style, and that's where we want to be. That's where the magic happens. C is for seeing. So when you know what to look for, it becomes easier and easier, and you get better and better results. This goes hand in hand with going out a lot to practice your photography. And I'm going to make a lot of videos going forward knowing what to look for. If you have any suggestions for me, you can feel free to comment down below. That would be awesome. And subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on when these videos launch. But you have the ability now, you have the opportunity to influence what I should make street photography videos about. So that's something to think about. As an example of knowing what to look for, I typically go out and look for shadows and highlights. So on bright sunny days, I go out in the early mornings or late afternoons. That's when the sun is at an angle, so I have these cooler looking shadows to create high contrast images that I absolutely love to work with. On rainy days, you can look for reflections and everything in between. There is no same day in street photography. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there is no bad weather or bad day for street photography. It's just you knowing how to use the elements of the weather to your creative advantage. And that's something you will learn to do more and more the more you go out. And if you want to go out in the field with me to see how I do my street photography, you can check out this video next. And with that, this video is done, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.